Americans are taking over Europe. That's right. Not us though. We're just taking over your phone screen or your computer screen or wherever you're watching this at. But anyways, there's a video right here called Americans Are Taking Over Europe, and it's by Into Europe, and there will be a link to the original video in the description section down below, along with a link to her channel, by the way, Amy from American Girl Reacts. We're comfortable today. We're on the couch gang status right here. So yeah, we're gonna find out. Americans are taking over Europe, and one of these days we're gonna try to move there. Actually, so we're gonna go take over too, if that's all right with you guys.
Yeah, I don't know how happy they're going to be about it, but we're getting smart, so we're all trying to go over there.
Right. All right. So let's check this out. Yeah, exactly. Like we're starting to realize, like America's not exactly what it's all cracked up to be,
No,
guys.
it's not at all.
All right. You want to check this out or
Yep,
what? Oh yeah, the original channel.
you already said until
Did
you're.
I, Into Europe. Well, I'm gonna say it again, guys. It is gonna be down there. In fact, I'm gonna hit like and hit subscribe on the original video. You guys should probably do that too, because I already know it's gonna be good. Let's see here.
If you walk
All
in the streets
right.
of Valencia, you'll pick up English, but not just any English, American
Oh,
English.
we don't need the
Speak the right
subtitles.
way, the American way.
Valencia is one of the most international cities in the whole of Spain. It's a tourism hotspot, it has multiple universities and English language schools, and it's becoming one of the favorite destinations for Americans in both Spain and
So I didn't realize anything about a specific spot in Spain being a hot spot for Americans. That's new to me.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that either.
A lot of times when Americans go to Europe, you think of like England or Germany or France or maybe Netherlands, stuff like that. But yeah, Valencia. Evidently, there's a lot of English speaking American English, because there's different Englishes, obviously, right? You
Yeah.
got Australian English, you got South African, you got British.
in Europe. And I'm here to investigate a topic that you might have seen on YouTube before. There is an entire subgenre of YouTubers praising the European way of life and escaping the United States. I
Yeah.
initially thought this might be just a media trend, since complaining about your country seems like a sure way to get those sweet clicks and views. But when I took a look at the numbers and started talking to Americans who made the move,
They still have their homes in the US.
I learned that it's not just the vloggers that are coming here. Instead, it's the story of what seems like a growing trickle of Americans emigrating to Europe. New
Yeah, so it's not just the vloggers and just the YouTubers. Like, there's just regular, everyday, normal American people that are just waking up and realizing, like, hey, this sucks. Like, let's go somewhere else where they offer better
I mean,
opportunities.
the sad part is though, is like we are all trying to go to Europe. Not everybody, but
Everybody's
like
trying to move. The Mexicans
some
are coming to
people would
Europe, go to Europe. Like,
exactly, but also like a lot of people are coming to America for a better life. And it's like, man, like
yeah,
we don't have it as bad as like some people,
right.
but it's like,
We're
you
in
know,
the middle, I
I
think.
feel like as long as you respect the country and you go about it the right way and take the proper channels, that's fine. But
Right. Take the proper channels, not the river. Sorry. Hey, you already know Rio de Janeiro river down there, southern border. It's a whole mess.
it's a mess.
visas, online work, and an
Blame
increasingly
Biden.
English-speaking Europe have lowered the threshold to come, while the United States is becoming a more unhospitable country.
On the latest outbreak of gun violence,
The trafficking of fentanyl and other synthetic
Oh,
opioids.
The Supreme Court ruled to end Roe v. Wade.
While the United States has prided itself on the promise of the American dream and for many remains a land of opportunity, could it be that its neglect of social policy is coming back to bite it? And might Europe's bet on quality of life finally be paying economic dividends?
yeah.
Since its
I
founding,
think.
the United States has been a country of immigration, with more than 1 million people migrating to the country in 2022. But the United States is also becoming a country of emigration. Before I go out into the city, I have a couple of graphs to show you to give you an idea of how significant this transformation is.
Love me some graphs.
Americans have historically not been the globe-trotting types. After all, the United States has everything you could wish for: cities with varying climates, diverse geography, and jobs and opportunity aplenty. In fact,
There's a lot
in
here.
1999, The Economist wrote that educated Americans were the least likely people to leave their country. But over the past 2 decades, the number of passports issued by the United States has boomed. particularly after the 2007 financial crisis and what I can only assume is the aftermath of the 2016 US presidential elections, which was won by Donald Trump. Today, some 40% of Americans have a passport, and some have used it to cross the Atlantic to make their way to Europe. And if you're an American looking to move to Europe, or a European like me who's constantly on the move, then today's sponsor, Speakly, is just what you've been looking for. I personally don't have the time to take language classes, but I love learning
Wonder
new
if it's
languages.
better than Duolingo.
Actualmente vivo en Valencia y estoy aprendiendo español. But
Language
learning a language
flex.
is hard, and about half of the time you're learning sentences like "el gato está en el fregadero," which frankly aren't that useful. Speakly has
Or on Duolingo, maybe you are a duck, or I'm a banana.
Yeah.
Like, you know how many times I practiced that sentence, like, maybe you're a banana? Like,
And then when we learn the animals, it's like we're learning rhinoceros, and it's like, why
Bullhorn.
are we learning that? Like, why are we not learning like
Right.
bird and dog?
Well, we do. Bird's vocal.
Well, yeah,
I guess
I
that's-
know, but it's like
But yeah,
I think the first animal was rhinoceros for me. Like,
yeah.
when am I ever going to use that word?
You might go to the zoo one time and be like, hey, hat is a nose horn. Or dar is a nose horn.
like "el gato está en el fregadero," which frankly aren't that useful. Speakly has spent 6 years studying thousands of language learners, developing a learning method that avoids all these useless sentences.
Let me check this out,
to
actually,
focus
because,
on
like,
stuff you can actually use
Duolingo's
in
not
conversation.
perfect.
And what I really love
Well,
is that the app also offers
they've taken
videos
away a
of
lot of
podcasts in the language you're
cool
trying
stuff
to learn.
too.
Instead of just maxing out reading comprehension, you can spread your stats in all the key competencies. If you're looking to learn a new language,
You
and
could
want
do
to
that
support the
too
channel,
on
click the link
Duolingo.
down below and start learning
Yeah.
some useful new languages today using Speakly. Try free for 7 days and get a 60% discount if you join the annual subscription. Now back to the video.
All right, let's go,
So the
guys.
data I found on American migration is imperfect. It turns out it's quite hard to get a precise number. I thought of looking at the number of registered voters, granted visas, or permanent residents.
The thing with the registered voters is not everybody registers. You know,
Yeah.
and that's real. And then also you got like the census people that go around and, you know, the Census Bureau. A lot of people don't fill that paper out. So, like, you know, the numbers aren't
They
good.
come to your door if you don't.
Oh yeah, they'll bug you, but like if you don't fill it out, you're not going to
They
be
actually they hire people to go around and check the houses that people didn't vote in and like stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like, that's crazy, but I don't think that it's normal for people not to vote in most places. Like,
Most other countries, yeah, but then you got America. Like, I mean, you got a lot of people to vote, but there's a lot of people that don't vote. I haven't, so I guess I can't really say much.
it's all right, but
But does it really do anything? I mean, there's so many scandals with. I mean,
oh
I'm not trying
man.
to get into political stuff or conspiracy theory stuff like that on the channel necessarily, but like, there's a lot of discrepancy. Like, when Bush became president, his brother was governor of Texas or Florida, and they had like this giant like miscount, like
Yeah.
that kind of. I don't think the results. Like, who's in charge of all this? Like, you can't. It's not accurate. It's
But
not.
then everybody was blindsided when it was like, oh man, it's just I don't even want to go there. Never mind.
Couch gang.
For the latter, it shows a steady increase in Americans having permanent residency in Europe, with their favorite destinations being the south of the continent, particularly Spain, Italy, and Portugal. If we look at other
didn't know
data, there
that.
would apparently be 200,000 Americans living in France alone, versus about 40,000 if you look at the number of permanent residents. But I have a hunch that the number of Americans is greater than that for the whole of Europe, especially because of the time it takes to get more permanent status. Some Americans basically
Oh,
move
yeah.
between European countries every 90 days while they wait for the slow wheels of Europe's bureaucracies to
Yeah.
Every 90 days.
Yeah, because of the visa thing, you can only be there 90 days. So they go to a different country, because it's open borders, right?
Wow.
So because you can only be there 90 days, you got to go to a different country for 90 days. That's not why you're waiting on your permanent residency. So until you get the permanent residency, your numbers aren't even actually adding into the
I
overall.
wonder what it takes
Same.
though. Like, do you got to take a test or like?
I don't know. We should check into it because financially and economically and everything, it's not the right time for us, but we definitely want to move to Europe at some point. It's just there's a lot going on in the world and our personal lives that's prohibiting that. And World War III is right around the corner, so I don't even know if it's a good idea. If we stay our ass in Rochester, Indiana, we're pretty much low key. Nobody's trying to like bomb Rochester, Indiana.
We don't even live in Rochester.
Well, we live
Indiana.
outside. We're like 10 minutes from town, but they don't need to know where our actual address is. But you know what I'm saying? Like, the closest town to us is Rochester, Indiana, okay? And like,
You just
nobody's,
gave it away again.
they don't know where we're at. They don't care. But the thing is like, they're not trying to bomb us. We don't live in New York City. We don't live in Washington. We don't live in Chicago. So like, you know, and unless the Chinese bomb us, which they could,
They want to.
yeah, going to Europe right now, it might, you know, it's like, would you move to Europe right before World War II started? If you knew World War II was going to start, probably not, right? You'd stay here where it was safer. You know, I feel like if we move there right now, it's going to be like right before World War III, and like all hell's going to break loose. So I don't know. But regardless, we don't have the money to anyways, and we got a lot of personal stuff going on. But within the next maybe 5 or 10 years, it'd be fantastic to move there.
Yeah.
That is my life goal, to move to Europe. So yeah. So anyways, back where we were saying, the numbers aren't adding up into the full thing because people are moving around a lot, like you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're here for 90 days, you're over there for 90 days, this night, you're not a permanent resident, so your number isn't there. So the numbers that they're talking about are way higher, right?
Countries every 90 days while they wait for the slow wheels of Europe's bureaucracies to do their work. Yet throughout all these different metrics, one thing is clear. The number of American expats migrating to Europe is increasing. And there are multiple, often personal stories for that. But they boil down to Europe simply being a better place to live. Now, I could go through all the reasons and show you graphs for why that is, like social mobility, cheaper education, access to healthcare, maternity leave, or work-life balance. I could also show you maps of walkable cities. Yeah, I know that it's kind of a Euroflex. Others come to leverage this, the American dollar, through geo-arbitrage.
There's something called geo-arbitrage, which basically means you can take what you earn in one place and move to another place that's cheaper and leverage it.
Since Americans earn more in absolute terms and the euro has fallen relative to the dollar, American incomes and savings can get more bang for their buck here. But based off of the people I've talked to here, there is one reason that stands out more than the rest. Safety.
I was also worried that if I went to a grocery store, was I going to get shot?
See, they're talking about moving over there for safety. We're talking about staying here for safety. Like, only because World War III. Obviously, there's a lot of gun violence and stuff here for sure. But again, we're not in a big city, so we don't really have to worry about that too much. Like, people are pretty nice around here. Like, nobody tries to put guns in your face and rob you. For the most part, it does happen.
Yeah.
It does happen, but not. It's not like what you see.
Keep your cars locked.
Oh yeah, keep your cars locked. People will steal. And in fact, I think the neighbor stole our bike. If you guys are watching, they're probably not. They don't care about my channel, but if you are, shame on you. Put it back.
You don't know.
5 people in the Seattle area, they were shot in a parking lot.
Well, this is a safe place to have kids.
Carnage in our nation's schools has become painfully repetitive.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that keeping themselves and their kids safe would be so high on people's list of priorities? And as it turns out, European countries are more than willing to oblige these American migrants. They're educated, seen as culturally compatible, and while there is definitely a pool of retirees coming to enjoy a golden retirement, according to the stats, most are young and potentially valuable contributors to Europe's aging societies and government deficits. In the south of Europe, Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Greece have all set up digital nomad visas with substantial tax concessions in the hope of attracting remote workers to increase their tax bases.
Yeah, we could be digital nomads doing YouTube, actually, and travel around, because obviously you just need to have an internet connection.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what a digital nomad would be, is somebody that works digitally that can literally be on any corner of the planet. It wouldn't matter. You just have to obviously have an internet connection to do your job, whether it's a YouTube content creator or just somebody that has a remote job. You know what I'm saying? I want to be a digital nomad.
I can't help but notice when his eyebrows like go to the side a little
They're
bit.
big. They're thick.
It reminds me of like a sad puppy. And I don't know why, but I'm like, aw.
He's a sad puppy.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's perfect for remote working Americans doing geographic arbitrage. But it has caused some backlash. Not just Americans, but also Europeans like myself that have come to live here raise prices on rent as internationals are able to price out locals, like in Portugal, where housing prices have increased by 40%, which has been blamed on mostly Americans coming to the country. And it's been trial and error to find winning recipes for these countries.
I mean, I can see it. It's the same thing as here. You know, you got all the people migrating to the United States. A lot of them illegally in the border thing that's going on, but it does cause inflation to go up. It does cause a lot of problems because you figure you got thousands and thousands and thousands of people coming in every day. Well, obviously,
When they're contributing to society, though.
well, yeah, but it's still going to drive prices up,
Right.
regardless of whether they're coming in
Yeah,
and
and
getting
that's
jobs.
what's going on right now, man.
Because a lot of them do, whether they come illegal or not. They come over here and they get their jobs somehow without paperwork. They got ways, but they do. They spend the money here. They create. You know what I mean? Like they're earning money and they're spending it. So they are helping with the workforce and stuff like that, but it messes with inflation.
Portugal scrapped its golden visa, which allowed free access to the country for a $600,000 investment, after mostly American investors started hoarding real estate and drove up housing prices. But in the north of Europe, it's a different story. After all, it doesn't make a lot of sense to live there as a digital nomad since life is much more expensive and the weather is just terrible. Instead, these countries seem to be attractive.
And that's where we're trying to go, is the north of Europe, where the weather's terrible.
It can't be any worse than this.
No, it's actually milder than this. We have bad winters.
Expensive, and the weather is just terrible. Instead, these countries seem to be attracting a different cohort of Americans who are integrating much more into local economic life. In Amsterdam, one of continental Europe's more cosmopolitan cities, it's actually hard to find Dutch-speaking waiters.
Yeah.
Settling down for Americans is much easier there, where
I've heard that.
fluency is greater, and where there are actually English-speaking jobs, owing to the export and trade-oriented economies of the North and the American investment in those countries. Recently, this has even created problems for top-tier jobs at the EU when Americans apply. And while the benefits of those migrants are clear, as with other immigrants, there's one important question. Will they integrate locally? After all, in Spain, like much of Southern Europe, there's little hope for additional American workers to integrate locally into the economy.
Obviously, you could work for a Spanish company, you know, there's that back door, but that's extremely difficult because even Spaniards can't work for Spanish companies.
So the people coming here remain in a parallel.
I don't know what they're talking about necessarily.
Yeah,
Why can't
I was
Spaniards
confused
work
a
for
little bit.
Spanish companies?
Yeah, I don't know.
Also, it just makes me really want coffee because, I mean, I've been craving coffee ever since I've seen that little cool animation.
It's difficult because even Spaniards can't work for Spanish companies.
I don't get that.
The people coming here remain in a parallel, internationally focused economy, whereas in the north of the continent, where the economy and society is much more English-speaking, there is much more hope for Americans to fit in. Especially since on the cultural side, Americans are notoriously bad at other languages, and may, like many expats in new countries, judge that their English is enough to get around. But there's something I wanted to know. Is this
Yeah, especially in Amsterdam, like you were saying, like it's hard to find like actual Dutch-speaking waiters and this and that because it's so international.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the Dutch people don't like Amsterdam because they're like it's not even Dutch anymore. Like it's just an international city.
Right.
Saying
Yeah.
it's not like there's like no Dutch culture left. Obviously, it is Dutch. It's in the Netherlands, but it's not like the rest of the Netherlands.
American migration a potential silver bullet to some of Europe's biggest problems, like its place in the global competition for talent and for its aging population? Well, when it comes to talent, there are these lofty articles about the death of Silicon Valley and how engineers may relocate to Europe, as well as new startup laws in Spain or France, where European countries hope to attract global and American talent to bring much needed dynamism to their economies. But so far, American founders haven't flocked to Europe. It's more the disillusioned American upper middle class that is coming to the continent. European bureaucracy and taxes means that the United States are still the kings of business. But where it could also have an impact is on the emigration of Europeans to the United States. There are fewer Europeans applying for permanent residence. However, since it's mostly young people that immigrate, this may also be a result of an aging Europe. There are just fewer people in the age group to emigrate to the United States. So once again, this is a bit inconclusive. But what remains true out of all of this is that 40% of America's 230 million people are entitled to European citizenship through ancestry. Some will likely choose to vote with their feet. That's a pool of educated.
Hold on, what is he
40%
saying?
of America. Once again, this is a bit inconclusive. But what remains true out of all of this is that 40% of America's 230 million people are entitled to European citizenship through ancestry. Some will likely.
How does that make sense through ancestry? We're all ancestors of Europe. Like all the white people here came from Europe. That's where white people come from, is Europe. Like all of our ancestors, it don't matter who you are in the United, unless you're a full-blooded Native American, your ancestors probably came from Europe. Well, even the Mexicans, because the Mexicans are a mix between the Aztec and Inca, whatever the Indians were down there,
Right.
mixed with the Spaniards.
Mhm.
Spaniards are Europeans. So we're all ancestors of Europe. I don't get that, but
I mean, as long as you're, some people aren't, right? I mean, there has to be some people it's
Native Americans. Everybody else has ancestors from Europe. White people came from Europe, babe.
I get that.
Yeah, unless you're a full-blooded Indian or Native American or whatever it's called, you would have some sort of European ancestry. So I don't understand how it's saying 40% of them qualify eligible for European Union citizenship.
Maybe it's saying that
Because it's like close. It's not generations back. It's like close.
maybe.
You know what I'm saying? Close ancestors.
Yeah.
130 million people are entitled to European citizenship through ancestry. Some will likely choose to vote with their feet. That's a pool of educated, culturally compatible workers that European countries could potentially tap into. But as it happens, it also is likely to reinforce the cultural and family bonds between both sides of the Atlantic. And it's something that could have deep implications on the languages spoken in Europe, and particularly how dominant English would become. While the volumes are relatively small, this first wave of American immigrants is a sign of what could potentially come. While right now, Europe seems to be a refuge for Americans looking for a better life rather than economic opportunity, and there are economic benefits to reap, if European countries can get their act together and offer a more friendly business environment, then it's possible that it's not just the middle class that would jump ship. But what do you think? Is offering good quality of life a suitable strategy? And can countries like Spain offer enticing offers to attract wealthy, educated, and entrepreneurial Americans? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. In a previous video, I've talked about Europe's productivity challenge compared to the United States, and looking into why the US has been so successful economically. It's part of a larger story of the diverging economic fates of Europe and the US.
So that's the end of his video.
Yeah. For me, the way of, like, quality of life is way more important than economic.
Oh yeah, they don't do anything for the people here necessarily. I got videos about that if you want to check it out. There's other videos and other reactions. Just go binge watch the channel, guys. That's all you gotta do. Just spend your life watching me.
Yeah.
Just playing. You got better stuff to do, I'm sure.
It would help us out a lot.
It would help. Hit like, hit subscribe. Have a super fun, awesome day, and we'll catch you in the next one. All right, take care.
Take care.